program designing aspect of the course. Last week I touched upon the importance of developing a balanced program because this can lead to a reduced likelihood or risk of injury. With upper body strength training, it's very important that it is a balanced program because a lot of what we do in the upper body can really dictate our postural alignment. In this section, we're going to talk about the types of exercises and muscles involved in the movement, talk about the importance of upper body training, and also explain how we progress and regress movements based on our clientele. So when designing a program, when you look at your athlete or client that you're training, it's very simple to just start off by looking at, are they a man or a woman? Men tend to be stronger in the upper body versus the women. This is going to dictate how you're going to progress your movements, but more importantly, how you're going to start them off. You're not going to have most females bench pressing for warm-up with 135 on the bar. That's not always the case with guys too, but it's more likely with men than women. But that is why you have to look at your client first as at their sex, and then look at their training age. Training age being, are they a beginner, intermediate, or advanced, elite level athlete? As an athlete, you can't just think that when we train, we're training one aspect of the body, because in sport, the body works as a whole. Simply put, when we throw, for instance, in softball, baseball, lacrosse, we're generating all the force and power from the ground up. So pushing off the feet, all the way through the trunk, finishing the movement with the top velocity, most power from the fingertips. When we train, you need to design programs that's going to mimic or be similar to those same movements on the field. When we train, there's closed and open kinetic chain methods. So when you hear closed kinetic chain, this is all going to be referencing the terminal joint, or the joint furthest from the joint with the greatest range of motion that's moving. With the upper body, to keep it real simple, the terminal joint would be the wrist. So when we're doing a push-up, most of the movement is occurring in the shoulder, though there is extension and flexion at the elbow. So for a closed kinetic chain, that is when the hand, in this sense, is fixed to a stationary object that is not moving. We are moving away or towards that object, in this case being the floor. So performing a push-up, we're pushing our body away and coming down to the floor. The floor is not going to move. We have a lot more stability in the shoulder now because the object we're working against is fixed. So that allows, this is what classifies it as a closed kinetic chain. Open kinetic chain, the terminal joint has free movement. So if you're waving to your friend across the street, nothing's stopping that hand from moving. You have free movement of the joint. Bench press, dumbbell shoulder press, we classify as open chain because though you're still working through one plane, the weight can go all 360 degrees and the shoulder has to engage in order to maintain its alignment and proper range of motion. So when you design a training program, it's best to use both open and closed kinetic chain training techniques. Stressed this before in the last section. A balanced program is a healthy, smart program. We've all seen the athlete or individual who's done a lot of chest. We all know who that is. That's the guy whose shoulders seem to come across the body and that big rounding of the back. This is a major issue because if this goes on for a longer duration, then you can develop actual medical issues, and one of them being upper cross syndrome. What this is basically an overdevelopment of the chest and a tightness in the upper shoulders and scapular area. Basically, these muscles are always firing, and you have an underdevelopment of the musculature around it. So, those individuals that do chest, mirror lifters I like to call them, they train everything in what they can see in the mirror. That's all the front. You get this rounding of the back, this hump that forms. That's because the muscles in the back aren't as strong as the muscles in the front. This alters their posture, can throw off the activation and firing mechanisms of muscle, and just kind of throwing off the whole synchronization of the motor unit firing to recruit those muscle fibers. So designing a program that is balanced is key, especially in sport. We've all seen this guy walking down the hall. I'm so big, I must bench at least 400 pounds. You know I bench a lot. I walk very stiff, big trunk twisting as they walk. That is not the natural movement of the body. It's supposed to be rotation at the shoulders and the hips. Spine stays neutral. There should be no movement up here. Also, for some reason, guys who do a lot of bench think their lats are huge, so their arms flail out. I always think it's because they got a new brand of deodorant, so it's starting to burn a little bit, so they're trying to get some air under there. But staying fluid as you move is the key thing in all sports and in life. You should never be stiff and tight. If this is the case, you got to start stretching, incorporating some sort of rehabilitation to your program. How do you keep a program balanced? Well, just keep it real simple in the beginning. Whatever you do to the front, make sure you do something to the back. If you do a push, you do a pull. If you do a vertical push, you do a vertical pull. Basically, mirror what you're doing on one side of the above, in front of the body, or mirror what you're doing above the body. Type of upper body exercises include the push-up, the bench press. This is a horizontal movement. The mirror or opposite to that would be an inverted row, barbell row, working in the same axes, horizontal axis. The vertical push, let's say shoulder press, tricep dip. You're still working up and down in that vertical axis. Same thing here, vertical pull, chin up, bicep curl, shrug. Still, again, vertical axis. So, tricep dip, the opposite of bicep curl, or tricep extension, the opposite of bicep curl. Horizontal pushes seem to be the most common exercise done early in the week. Why? Because everyone just feels good. They want to start the week off right. As an athlete, or for an athlete, this is something you'd more want to push towards the end of the week, because full body exercises is what we need to do for athletes. The lower body is the main driving force for most athletic competition. But when we end up doing the upper body, there are variations and different methods in order to increase intensity without it just being increasing load. So for someone starting off right off the bat, never touched a weight, it's probably best to do something where they're more incorporating body weight movement. Know how to move yourself, then you can start adding on to the foundation. Build a strong foundation, build upon it. So first variation to an upper body exercise, to keep it real simple, would probably be push-up. From then you can get into free weight exercises or machines where you're now doing a pressing motion to the chest. But now variations could be a dumbbell, a barbell, cable press, starting with different start and end positions. So bench press, your start and end position, rather than being out in front, your start and end position can be down at the bottom. This can be done with dumbbells now. You know, you're alternating arms as you go, you do them together, you alternate, and then press up together. That's a horizontal push, very many variations. When it comes to incline, there's always a little bit of argument here. Well, is it a horizontal or a vertical push? Well, it all depends on the angle. I'd like to say if it's 45 degrees or more, it's starting to become classified as a vertical push, just because now you're getting a little bit more shoulder activation, shoulder involvement, less chest. Now, you do an incline at one click, or maybe a 20-degree incline, 30-degree incline. I still classify this as a horizontal push. The biggest thing now being you have to do that same sort of angle of pull the other way, mirroring working the opposite muscles that are doing that movement. Vertical push. People are afraid of this because they feel like can damage the joints. Yes and no. If you overload the muscle, do too much before you're ready, yes, you can injure yourself. The thing being, when you are training, whether it's yourself, a novice, or elite level athlete, the load should not impact form and technique. Nothing should be disrupted. So types of overhead press exercises are the overhead press. This could be done with a barbell. Dumbbell, now you have hands working independently of each other. Kettlebells, now you can hold the kettlebell where the bell end is resting on the forearm, or to increase intensity so you get a little bit more shoulder activation to stabilize it. Kettlebells held vertically, now they got a little bit more sway, so now you really have to make sure everything's engaged nice and tight. This is, of course, a more advanced level of movement for an athlete. So, doing double, single arms, alternating, starting high and low, same thing as bench, are different variations to increase intensity with not having to necessarily increase the load. Doing tricep dips, tricep extensions, skull crushers, anything that's causing extension at the elbow is considered a push, and the counter movement to that would be flexing at the elbow, but now working in the same plane. Horizontal pull, so you do a bench press. Next thing you want to do, maybe bent over row. Variations of the rows are TRX, barbell, dumbbells, cables. But the biggest thing, especially with athletics, is in all sport, everything occurs in front of the athlete. It's very important in your program, whether it's in season or out of season, but more importantly, even in season, you want to try to do more pulling exercise to work the posterior chain, the back, for instance, or the glutes and hamstrings, because a lot of what athletes deal with is in front of their body, and they're doing a lot more pushing than pulling. Remember, volume, repetition, this can lead to an imbalance if it's done the same way over and over and over again. And if these athletes are practicing day in, day out, they're doing the same repetitive motion over and over and over again. So we have to make sure we try to counteract those movements, especially in the in-season, because this will help reduce the likelihood of them having to be a regular visitor to the athletic training room. Vertical pull variations are chin-ups, pull-ups, that's just changing of the hands facing or turning away. Alternating the hand grip, one hand forward, one hand away. Cable pull-downs, single band pull-downs, bicep curls, shrugs. Shrugs with barbell, shrugs with dumbbell, shrugs with a hex bar. Just simply changing the angle in which you're holding or pushing the weight can change the types of muscles that are recruited for that movement. So how can you determine if you're developing a program for yourself, if you're balanced out or not? Ideally, you should be able to do a lat pull down or pull at least half of your body weight, if you do not train at all. Now, say you're a big avid bencher, you bench press 200 pounds, and you weigh 100 pounds. To see if you're somewhat balanced in your push-pull ratio, if you can do 100 pounds strapped to your body, on top of your own body weight, for one rep of a chin-up, you're going to say, ideally you might have a somewhat balanced program. You're balanced out. So here's something you can do just to test to see where you stack up. For a practical down the road, you'll be required to demonstrate and instruct those to perform some exercises. That is understanding how to regress movements. If you can understand this, it makes it very easy to coach and understand what you're looking for. Let's look at the push-up. Key to progressing and improving the push-up is the use of elevation and tempo type training. Elevating the hands to a box can take the load off the individual, so now you can reinforce proper form and technique. Implementing tempo training helps educate the body in the proper motion throughout the movement itself, knowing how the muscle should fire, feeling every nook and cranny of the movement. People hate this, but in the end, it does make for more efficient movement quality. So, basic progressions. Starting out, no upper body strength. You'd start on a 24-inch box, then we'd lower it down to an 18-inch box, then eventually working to the floor. This is the one way to just progress the movement. Then we can layer upon this. Once they've gotten to the push-up where it's pretty easy, now we want to change and start working on different angles of the chest. So elevating the feet onto a low box, or putting weight on the upper body will increase motor unit firing, increase the amount of motor units recruited. Changing the angle of the push by simply raising the feet will hit the muscles a different way, still stimulating the similar muscle types, but then when we go back to doing a regular basic push-up, you're going to be able to recruit more motor units, more muscle fibers, and the weight's going to explode up. The next progression, make it more explosive. How? Think of when we do clap push-ups. Push up as hard as you can, hands come off the ground, more explosive movement. Tempo training. Tempo is just controlling the rate of descent, in this case, or ascent. So eccentric push-up, we'll have them start in an up position, lowering themselves down at a cadence rate of 1 to 5 seconds. This is more taxing on the muscle, and it will really fatigue the person out. Adding a pause or an isometric contraction midway through or even at the base of the movement will take away the spring-loaded mechanism for the movement to come back up. So there's no recoil, there's no momentum or hitch that you can get to get back up. It's strictly raw power. Combining both forms in the movement really will make it very difficult. So a low descent to a pause to then coming back up is hard, but then when it comes to doing the basic regular movement, it's going to feel significantly easier and less of a pain. So for the muscles involved in the push-up, there is a lot of shoulders involved, mostly the anterior portion of the deltoid and the pecs. We have the triceps engaged for the extension of the elbow, the scapula for maintaining shoulder stabilization, so the trapezius and rhomboids. The stabilizers of the core are also engaged in the abdominal region. That's not just the stomach, but the back, the sides, the erector spinae, which is the lower back, the glutes, everything. This is a full body movement. You have to maintain a proper straight line in order to conduct this movement properly. But the major muscles involved, the primary movers, are the pec and the anterior deltoids. And the triceps will be the secondary because they're allowing for the extension of the elbow. What are the common mistakes and things you see? Well, first off, the most common thing you do see is the hips dropping, so you get that bigger lower arch in the back. All right, so now you're doing more of a decline, bench press pushing down as opposed to engaging the chest head on. The other thing, you see the elbows flare out, going up higher than the shoulders. Or the hips start to stick up in the air but goes up because they're not going down as far, but they think this is going to be easier. Now you're hitting the chest in a different way. Tucking of the elbows, neutral spine, feet spread is the ideal position we want to be in, straight like a beam. Now let's move on to the pull-up. So the biggest thing here, you want to make sure you get full extension at the bottom, full lockout. The lat pull downs do nothing for pull-up or chin-up strength. You can train as much as you want. I've seen guys can do the whole rack, 300-pound lat pull downs. They can barely do 2 pull-ups. It's just a different movement, different force. The cable is taking a little bit of the weight off the weight stack, so it's not truly the weight you're lifting. So how do we progress the pull-up? Well, there's many types. Partner assisted, pushing off the ground, or bands. Bands tend to be the best way to progress or regress a movement. Hooking a band to the bar and then having the athlete either stand in it with their foot will give a great deal of help. Having them put their knee in the band instead of their foot will reduce the amount of assistance they get from the band. If you don't have a band, there's some other ways we can progress the movement. So you'd initially have the athlete start with just holding the top of the movement, chin above the bar, holding it for X amount of time, let's say 10 seconds. Once they've mastered that, the next progression would be having them start at the top and lowering themselves down at a rate to 5 to 10 seconds. Then repeating this. This could be done for 1 rep. This could be done for 5 reps in a set. It's up to you, but you have to see what you're trying to do down the line in order to properly progress this movement. Then we have the add-in combination of the two. You do an isometric hold at the top, lowering yourself down to full extension. It's better off to over-exaggerate every component of this lift early on, so then when it gets to the actual dynamic component, just down-ups with it, athletes are performing it right and you don't have to re-coach them on doing it properly now. So do it right from the start, makes your job a lot easier down the road. Once they've mastered their body weight, just lowering down and holding, now let's try and start putting into the pulling motion of the lift. So we can incorporate bands using TRXs with set at a lower setting so your feet can be on the floor, pushing, driving through the feet to help you come up. Or a recline row. So maybe you're not working strictly the lats, but maybe it's a little bit more of the mid-back and lats. Then this can progress to pull-ups. Once we've gotten to the pull-ups, you can say you can do 3 sets of 10, no problem, and you're actually moving up to higher repetitions of 15. Now this is where you can get the belt, add a weight to it, give yourself a little more external resistance. And then further, for those guys who are hot shots, you can add band resisted or plyo pull-ups where you're lifting up, hands being switched on the bar, hands coming off the bar and grabbing back on. The prime mover for the pull-up is the lats, or the latissimus dorsi. The muscles that assist in the movement are the biceps brachii, brachioradialis, triceps brachii, posterior deltoid, rhomboids, teres minor, rotator cuff, pec major, serratus, anterior, all this stuff. All these muscles are basically being engaged to keep the shoulder in proper alignment and the body in straight line with the hands. The main movement in this action is elbow flexion with extension and abduction. So bending at the elbow and extending at the elbow. But then abduction is occurring at the shoulder. The humerus is moving towards the midline of the body as we go down, and then moving away. Then we have downward rotation, retraction of the scapula. So it'd be good to just know the prime movers and the synergistic movers and what the muscle act or the joint actions are occurring during this lift. Same thing with the pull-up. So primary movers, synergistic exercise. All right. What to watch out for? So a lot of times in the pull-up, people tend to lean back, so they're bringing their chest to the bar in the pull-up. You still want to try to keep your face close, so when you pull up, the bar is just passing in front of your nose, chin going over the bar. The other big thing that a lot of athletes tend to do is they don't go all the way down, not fully descended for the lift to complete it. The full lockout is necessary to get the full muscle to engage in the pulling up. The other is shortening, not getting the chin up all the way over the bar, and then the cheating method, kicking, swinging, doing the CrossFit style kipping or butterfly type pull-up. For this, we're looking mainly at a strict pull-up, down up, no momentum or anything to help you in the lift. So these are a few key points to know. Look over the synergistic and the muscle types because this will be something that is looked upon in the practical and on the quiz.